Let me tell you guys a story. When I was 16 years old, I got my hands on a 1979 Kawasaki KZ 650 B1. And it was through a friend, and he paid me to work on it, and I restored it, kind of restored it for him, did what I could at the age of 16. And I rode it more than he did. I geared it for wheelies. I was doing crazy stuff on it. It was just burnouts, which you can do on a KZ 650. So at any rate, at one time, it had points on it, points and condenser, and it went bad. So when I say it went bad is the contacts wore out. Now, I could have just sanded down the contacts or get a new points and condenser for it, but I decided to go electronic ignition. And with electronic ignition, you need to remember a couple of things. Electronic ignition has more wires, more things that can go wrong. When you run electronic ignition, your coils need to meet the resistance of your igniter system, okay, for your module. I didn't know this at first. So I put the electronic ignition on and I rewired it, and I also updated the stator. Now, when I did all this, I got the Dana green coils. Now, the Dana green coils and electronic ignition don't necessarily work together because of the resistance in ohms. The ignition system I got was off of a C, and I also pulled the front brakes off of that because it was dual front brakes, but that's another video. And the ignition system called for different ohms for the coils than what the greens were. So, it ran. It ran great, you know. So after riding it for a while, I noticed that a cylinder would drop out. So I'm like, all right, I got a bad coil or something. So, and it ended up being a coil. It burnt out the coil. So I did this a few times. I changed the coil, and I got tired of it. And finally, it burned my igniter out. So mind you, this is before I knew that, you know, the ohm resistance or whatever. And this, I'm going to get to this because I later on found out by doing these things what the significance is. I had this idea, and this idea was to take a GM distributor, the module, out to fire my coils. Now I took this module and I wired it with some diodes and I think 2 resistors. This is a long time ago. What I did was I used the trigger for the ignition to trigger the modules on it, but I have a drawing somewhere, and I'll have to try and show this in a picture in the video. But what I did was I took this module right here. I took 2 of them, and I used that with the pickup on the side of the engine to run the Dana coils. And then what started happening was burning out coils again because the ohms was not right for the coil. And I did that a couple of times. I thought it was a module. It wasn't the module. At one time, it did burn out a module. It overheated and it just shut off. But I found out that it was a different resistance. Now, I think I used the gray, if I'm not mistaken, the gray coils or black. Like I said, it's been a long time. So, anyways, I used a different Dana coil and never had a problem getting stuff. And to this day, the guy that I sold it to is still running that ignition system. So, that's good. Let's see. Now, I'm going to dive into something else. I'm putting a Terminator X on a Mopar small block.